Welcome to Motherhood Uncut. We are so glad that you're here. Deb Rubin and I, Kate Kripke, bring to this podcast all of those conversations that are actually kind of hard to have around motherhood. We will be talking about things that make you laugh, that probably make you cry in the best of ways, that move you, that inspire you, that teach you new things. And we are really committed to this podcast because we really believe that nobody should be mothering alone. So come jump in with us, pour yourself a glass of wine, cup of tea, put on your running shoes, turn on the audio in your car. Come be with us for a bit. We can't wait to mother with you.
Hey everyone, this is Deb. It has been so long since we have had a recording of our podcast. Kate has been adjusting to her new life in Japan, and I have been adjusting to 2024 here in Boulder. And finally, we got together and had a really important conversation, and I'm really excited for you to listen to it. We have some important new information to share, and as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting, and no one should be mothering alone. Have a wonderful day.
So I'm pretty sure that most of you listeners out there have some itch to do something that you haven't quite brought the courage forward to do yet. Maybe some big goal, some big leap. That might be something like return to work or take a step up in your career or start your own business maybe, or maybe it's something that's not related to work, but is other passion and purpose driven. So to join a board or to create a new community, or maybe it's about your own health and well-being. If there's a big change you're wanting to make and a big leap, come and apply for our 12-month program, Take the Leap, because we're going to get you there. Everything you need to know about the science of change and limiting beliefs and how to expand your potential and how to move through failure and how to really stay on course so that your life can be exactly what you want it to be. Go ahead and apply at the link in the show notes. And after you apply, we're going to offer you a 30-minute free consult so we can talk with you about whether or not this program is a fit for you. Come jump in. Now is your chance. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Kate.
We're
Happy
podcasting.
We're podcasting for our first time since you're in Japan.
I'm in your future.
Yeah, what time is it there?
It's 11:15 on Tuesday, February 6th. What time is it there?
It is February 5th at 6:48 p.m.
That's some crazy shit.
I know. We're in different days. That is
different
crazy.
days.
Well, how are you doing? How is it going over there?
It's all the stuff. It's all the stuff. I feel settled enough at this point to call it home for the next few months. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we've already been here a month. One out of 6 months is behind us. We traveled so much for the first month, and now that we're in February and the girls are just starting school, it feels like I can put my roots down a little bit. That feels really good, but dang, I mean, I know you know this because we've had conversations before hitting record, but the work never ends. The practice, the work, all the stuff we've talked about over the years and seasons of this episode of the podcast, all the stuff we've talked about, I'm putting into practice big time.
I bet you are.
All the stuff. It's all the stuff.
Yeah.
I was saying to a client this morning, actually, it's almost like being postpartum again.
Yeah.
My sleep is, you first get here and my sleep is off and my eating habits are off and everything feels new and unpredictable and uncertain. And I'm like clumsy and messy and forgetting things and my emotions are all over the place. I mean, it was a little bit like being postpartum again. I felt isolated, right? All the stuff.
Oh my God, what a funny parallel. And it's transition, like how our last episode went around transition and all, you're a little stripped down, right? Because a new part of you is growing.
One of the things I think is so interesting now that we're circling back publicly after this is to remember how we always come back to a baseline. Like that's what resilience is, right?
Mm.
It's like my digestion is clicked back into place. My sleeping pattern is clicked back into place. It's like all the stuff that's all over. It's like we give it time, we take care of ourselves and give it time. And then like we find our new baseline, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Such an
Well,
interesting process.
the other thing that I've been finding so much with just being like a human is slipping into in balance and out of balance, like constantly. Like I even notice it like it's Monday, right? And over the weekend, I just was like on a ski trip and drinking wine and eating chocolate and doing all the things and having so much fun. And then it's like Monday morning, it's like, okay, you know, come back in, like do my laundry and like clean my room and just like little things that needs, and it's like a dance all the time, like in and out of balance. And
Gosh.
that's a microcosm. So you're in it like in an extreme version, but the
Well,
dance is the same.
it is the same. So I'm in an extreme version. That's a less extreme version, but still more extreme than the dance of in and out of all the things in one day.
Yes.
You're talking about the going from being in the mountain. By the way, you sang that in my heart. I was like, wait, I'm FOMO. I want to be skiing and drinking wine and eating chocolate with you. So you have that on the weekend, and then you come back to life, and it's all the other stuff. And then within each day of your life, when you're not in the mountains skiing and drinking wine and eating chocolate, are all the little moments of coming in and out of balance.
Totally. Totally.
We have an announcement to make today.
We do. Yes, we do. I will make the announcement.
You make the announcement.
So, over the winter break and kind of coming into 2024, I got really clear that I am going to step back gracefully from doing this podcast. And Kate, to our listeners, I'm telling the listeners right now, Kate and I discussed it, obviously, and we had a really beautiful conversation around it. And I'll explain where I'm coming from in a moment. But I just want to say to you, Kate, that I thought like our conversation around it was just such a reflection of two really good friends and two women that practice personal responsibility. And like, it just felt really sad and raw, but also really like clear and kind of empowering for both of us. And like, so Kate's going to continue the podcast. The name's going to be the same. And I'm going to come on as a guest every now and then. And I'm really excited about that. Before I go into my explanation, do you want to say what that was like for you?
Yeah, I mean, you and I know each other so well because we're so perceptive and curious. And not only just as humans, but like that's what we do for a living, right?
Right.
We are paying attention and reading between the lines. And so I think when you when we had that Zoom call to discuss this season of the podcast and you came to me with that decision, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
Right. So that I think there's part of that is like part of what makes our relationship so deep is that we're following each other.
Right.
We're
Right.
paying attention. We don't hold in things, and then say it and shock each other. It's like, oh, I knew because we've had these conversations that there
Sure.
was some curiosity that you had along the way. And so the announcement to me about it wasn't jarring. I think it's what's so interesting is the way you started that call was, well, I've been giving a lot of thought. I'm hyper, is that not your exact words, but you said something like, I've been giving a lot of thought and I'm really, really worried that I'm going to upset you with this.
Hmm.
And and it's funny because while of course, I mean, this is where when I talk about it live with you now, it's like it makes me a little teary. I would so much prefer to be doing this podcast with you. for a million reasons, both professionally, because I learn from you in every conversation. And I think our guests love you and our listeners love you. And I'm a little bit like, no. And it's our connection time.
Yeah.
It's where we come together. Like we have sort of fallen a bit, maybe the wrong word, but dependent on, well, when we podcast, I'm going to get to reconnect. Right. So it's
Totally. Like we're not making an effort to like go out to dinner as much and stuff
even
like that.
it's like we
Yeah.
know we're going to have this time. And now that I'm in Japan, I feel even more like coming here. I was like, well, I'm going to talk to Deb every week because we're podcasting, right?
Right.
Of course, we'll keep talking every week. And we have, even though we haven't been podcasting. But I think when you said, I don't want to upset you, to me, there's such a difference between the loss and the grief that comes with loss of something that you love doing
Mm,
and upset that comes when you take something personally. And
totally.
there's not one part of me that takes it personally or took it personally when you said, my heart hurts at the idea of not doing it with you anymore.
Yeah.
And there's more to be said, which we can talk about in a little bit about what this podcast will become. And my whole goal is to help support you in you living your life in a way that feels happy and well, and knowing that sometimes that's going to involve me and sometimes it's not.
Totally. That's so beautiful. Thank you for being you. I mean, I think it was interesting when I was checking in with myself. One of the main reasons I wasn't 100% sure is for everything you just said of our relate that I didn't want to like cause any bumps in our friendship or lose the time with you, or that I actually love like the moments of having fun conversations with you. So it was a hard decision, but let me explain where I'm coming from. I know you already know, but actually, even since I've talked to you, I've gotten even clearer. So I think, one thing we're talking about on this podcast a lot is our journeys if, as mothers, as women, and of really um, living within alignment of our truth. And one thing that is confusing for me right now is I am in the field of supporting moms, particularly raising adolescent girls. And I am raising adolescent girls, like right there. So I think what I love about this work is I'm just in it with my people, and I'm vulnerable and I'm learning as I go too. And when I feel my strength is helping people stay connected during rocky times. But as a mother, I'm flailing all the time and thriving. I'm doing both. But so I don't know if our listeners know this, but for 19 years I lived in an office in just a private practice room with four walls. And then I would run groups in another room with four walls. And I was very low profile, never was exposed, never had social media account, nothing. And then 2 summers ago, gosh, that's crazy. Only 2 summers ago, in 1 month, I just got on Instagram, started a newsletter, and started a podcast. And I went from being really like, inward practicing to exposed. And I took it as an experiment. I was like, I want to see what this world's all about. I want to understand it. I know I need to market myself in a different way, and this is part of it. And it has been an adventure. And there's been a lot of things I've loved and a lot of things I haven't loved. And I'm just learning as I go. But one of the things I'm feeling particularly protective of right now is being so exposed with my personal life about my girls. And I'm getting a little of that feedback from them, that it feels exposing for them. Now, granted, they're typical teenagers that are egocentric. So if I make an Instagram post and they're like, was that about me? And they're following me, and it suddenly just feels like a little bit like my worlds got too entwined. And so I just had a moment of like, I'm just gonna like tone it back a little bit, maybe until they're a little older, or they're maybe one of them's out of the house, and still do my work and do what I love to do. I love writing my newsletters. I love working with individuals and I love my groups, but basically I'm backing off from the podcast to be a little less exposed.
Yeah. I mean, it makes so much sense in so many ways. I mean, the the beauty of this podcast and the beauty of what the chapter that we will close, because it won't, I mean, things will be similar, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but it won't be the same when it's me taking it in the direction that is more specific to me and my work, right?
Totally.
The chapter that we've closed is that chapter of inviting people in to the very private conversations that you and I have
Yes.
about our mothering
Yes.
of our daughters. And it's been a both and, because we've had plenty of episodes where we've interviewed other people or where we have, talked about, I mean, you and I have always tried to be really thoughtful about not exposing them. Our listeners should know that, up to this point, we have really asked our girls for permission anytime we've shared any really personal stories about them. But it's getting to your point, it's creating a rub in a new and more intimate way right now.
Yeah.
And so that it's the both and of like, how have we've hit that edge of being able to really talk about the things that go on privately when it's just you and me speaking about our mothering, where if we were to keep doing that to continue to grow this podcast in that way, in the depth that we want to keep digging into, we would be unintentionally and unfairly bringing them along in ways that they don't want to be brought along with.
Yeah.
And we have 4 children and they're all different. And some of them have responded to this. They've all responded to this in different ways, but there's been enough of that discomfort that there's kind of no other option, especially if we're going to,
Totally.
it's what we preach, insecure mothering.
Exactly. Exactly. And like, because my kids have, when I've asked them about sharing certain things and they've said no, what I have found that there's been some episodes where I just share less about my personal life, which makes me feel a little guarded sometimes. And it sort of defeats like the purpose of you and I just letting it all hang out. And then I feel like I'm not sharing all my stuff, my parts that could be helpful in the conversation, but it's out of protection of my girls. So I felt a little like stuck in between a rock and a hard spot or whatever that expression is. And that's when it just got really clear. And like you just said, it came to an edge. And I think you and I together, because what we do is talk personally and we bring that out in each other. Like, I mean, I can't like sit here and not tell you every little thing that's on my brain. Like that's just how we roll. And so I felt like I was being like I said, holding back. So I think us together has hit an edge. And so let's hear where you're going to take it. I want to hear.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, let me answer the question by saying I don't entirely know, because anytime we're going to something new, there's a place of letting go before new beginning. And, we call that the bardo, right? That between lives, right? That space in between is very much where I feel like I'm in this podcast right now. I know that this podcast is really important to me in the larger mission that I have, which is that I want to impact the lives of as many mothers as I possibly can. You and I also have always been a little bit different in the way we look at our work that way. I'm like one to many, 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 right? And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't mean to speak for you, but I know that you love to go really deep, right? To I don't even want to speak to you, but I'll speak to myself. So what I'm wanting in my own work is to impact as many mothers as possible.
Yes.
And my goal in impacting mothers is to really change this narrative around what's the good mom.
Mm-hmm.
To move in as many platforms as I can, Instagram, the podcast, my writing, my own coaching program, to move from this sense of good mothers are those who dedicate everything to their children all the time, to good mothers big quotes around those terms. Of course, there's a million ways to be a good mother, but good mothers are those who tend to their own well-being on behalf of their children because of that maternal and child mental health overlap. And so I'm really interested in continuing to grow this podcast to really crack the nut on mental health and well-being for mothers. And what does that look like when we do that in service of our children? And so, I think my goal is to have a lot of really interesting interviews with people who can help us define mental health, maternal mental health, that can help us answer the big questions. What does it look like when we're healthy, and what does it look like when we're unhealthy and unwell, to really help us. One of my passions, as you know so well, Deb, and I think our listeners are learning, is really supporting those women who are high achieving, success driven, perhaps career driven, maybe not, but that sort of that population of women who are wanting to invest time and energy in things outside of motherhood, and then are feeling a lot of anxiety in motherhood and a lot of guilt in motherhood, and sometimes coming back and overcompensating for that. And I'm really wanting to create this to be a space where we can hear from other mothers, other women who are doing that well. So I think that's the direction I want to go in. And I'm really excited about some of the interviews I have lined up already and some of the topics I want to bring, but it's going to be pretty mental health and well-being focused. And of course, that comes back into the parenting, but yeah, that's where I'm
Yeah,
going.
beautiful. I'm excited to listen. I'm excited for you. I think it sounds amazing. And that is where we're different, is I would say what lights me up is having intimate conversations with moms and creating that village feel. So whether it's in person, I've been having like these sexuality process groups in my home where I get to pour everyone a cup of tea and have a topic and have those kind of conversations. Or for the people that aren't local, having these deep dives that are twice a couple times a month, that are around counter will and sexuality and all things adolescent, to like expand our compassion for their journey while really supporting the moms in this messy process too. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And so to our listeners, I hope you'll still sign up to my newsletter if you haven't yet, and keep in the know of just, tidbits of information and ways to connect, and staying in the know of my offerings. And I still think I'm going to be on Instagram some. I'm figuring that out right now. There's parts of it I really like, and parts of it I'm just resistant to. So I'm just kind of not making major decisions about that, but just paying attention to myself. And that's where I'm at. Can you
What
hear
a
my family
model.
in the background, by the
No,
way?
I can't hear anything in the
Okay, good, because
background.
they're like cooking dinner and being really loud.
As they should be at this hour. I think, Deb, that's such a model. Something that's always been so important to you and me, both for each other but also to our girls, is go first. We have to go first. Model, 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 model. And you're modeling boundary, you're modeling personal responsibility, you're modeling being willing to make a decision that involves a no, right?
Yeah.
Without necessarily knowing what the yes is, right? It's like you're just swimming in it. And I hope for our listeners that, who I know are going to miss you as an active part, to just know that your choice to call out with yourself what is really important to you is, although it's almost like we say this, like, I know, I can't remember who it was, Glennon Doyle or something said this first, be willing to disappoint other people so that you don't disappoint yourself. And
Mm,
I think a lot of people would be disappointed to know that you're not a regular voice on this podcast. And better that than you continuing to do something that your heart knows isn't right for you, you know?
totally. Thank you.
I think one of the things I'm excited about, I mean, I hope that this podcast, I'm a teacher at heart. Like, I
Yes.
love teaching. And I hope that this podcast continues to be a place where people learn new skills, new mindsets, new ways of thinking about things. And you have so much to offer that, I'm sure maybe I won't have to bribe you to come onto the podcast, but I think our listeners are going to keep hearing a lot from you. It will just be in a bit of a different context than up to this point.
I would be honored. And I have to say, I just want to give you a deep bow, because you are the person that jumps in with 10 feet, right? An idea sparks and you are all in. And just, I think we probably said this before, but so as you all know, one day we're sitting at the pool having a glass of Sauvignon Blanc and saying, this would be such a fun podcast. And literally, Kate, the next day you had all the equipment. And so I'm like, okay, here we go. And like, that is just who you are. It's you in your glory. It's you being you in your fullest. And it's been really fun to be, front row of watching you like make this happen. Like, you were the one that got the photographer and you were the one that made shit happen. And I loved being part of the journey. So thank you. I love you so deeply. I've loved being exposed with you in our conversation, and I'm really looking forward to having our private conversations again.
No, well, you just have to we're gonna have to come. This is what I was saying before yesterday when we were offline chatting. I need a regular date with you every week.
We will.
So we got to find a time to put that on the calendar, because I'm scared, as I was saying in my texting with you. There's a part of me, to go back to our parts work, there's a part of me that is scared that I'm going to become unimportant in your life. And that's not a reality-based fear. That's my own stuff coming forward. But I really want to make sure that we still create with me across the globe in your future, in your 16 hours ahead future, that we create regular time to stay connected, because I need that.
I want you to like look me in the eye right now, because listeners, we're Zooming. You will never be unimportant to me, ever, ever. Okay, so feel that in your body. We will 100% have a weekly visit. And we're just going to both, like you said, compromise on the time challenges, because it's real, like it's early for you. It's my bedtime almost, which is ridiculous.
Totally.
And we're just going to like figure it out. And I just am going to be cheering you on from the sidelines every day, because, I'm your biggest cheerleader. So
I know you are. I love you.
I love you. Thank you for this adventure. And thank you, listeners. I've just like so appreciated your comments and just your amazing, commitment to keep supporting us. It's really been amazing. I love this community we've created, and I'm just a click away from an email. So please email me if questions come up or anything. I just want to be accessible in that way still.
It is amazing community we've co-created together here, Deb. So you'll be back. And listeners, we've got a very, very chock full, exciting season coming up for you. So stay tuned. We've got more. I love you, Deb.
I love you, Kate. Bye.
Bye. Hey, listeners, we sure hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, we would really love for you to share this with a friend. So here's the deal. We're all in this together. And as a community of moms, we need to make sure that no one is left alone. So you can help us with that. Please share this episode or other episodes that you found useful for you. Please consider writing a review and rating this podcast, because when you do, it actually makes it more accessible to other moms who might be looking for podcasts that they would also find useful. So we are so grateful you're here. And if you were interested in just taking a minute or two to share and rate and review, Deb and I would be so grateful. Thank you for mothering with us.